In today's news update, health officials say error was made in issuing quarantine clearance certificate. A visitor was allegedly notified immediately, received 2 additional positive tests upon request, and still decided to attend funeral.
We also see young philanthropist Jaleel Cameron donating a whopping $1,000 in grocery vouchers to family in need just in time for Easter.
Premier Foyes says safety first as CDC maintains a no-sail order for cruise ships until November.
And there's so much more happening on today's edition of 284 News, so stick with us. There's more after this commercial break.
Welcome everybody. It's Wednesday, March 31st, 2020. I'm Ron Grant. We're coming to you live and direct from Tortola in the British Virgin Islands.
My name is Javon Wilson, and it's such a pleasure to be joining you once again. A terrific Wednesday. We're halfway through the week.
April, we see you.
Definitely, but such a really deep newscast to jump into today. But beginning with some good news, we see Honorable Kai Rima, which of course is the representative for the 5th District, receiving tons of compliments across social media for following through with the recent launch of the 5th District Business Services Directory app. Now, if you're yet to see it, let's take a look at it. Now, in speaking with Honorable Kai Rima today, he said, and I quote, "We've now formulated an app that embraces technology, brings our community together, of course, while connecting all the businesses and services offered within the 5th District." Now, viewers, just tomorrow, of course, I hope you will be tuning in. We'll be catching up with the minister in person right here at 284 Media, not only to discuss this app, Ron, but by extension, his business plans for the 5th District.
Of course.
And I mean,
economic zone, of course.
Yes, this is something that he campaigned on, and to see it come into fruition is just really refreshing.
Wonderful, and I know the residents of the 5th District are quite pleased in having their representatives support them in this endeavor. Now beginning, viewers, on the local scene here in the British Virgin Islands, senior health officials in the Ministry of Health and Social Development have come forward stating that an error was made in the issuing of a quarantine clearance letter to a visitor on March 25th after conducting a test the day before on March 24th. Senior health officials, in speaking to our agency, stated that upon realizing that the inaccurate clearance letter was sent to the visitor, the individual was allegedly immediately contacted, the document was retracted, and the individual was made aware of their positive status and instructed to remain in quarantine. Now, the visitor then requested confirmation testing and received 2 additional positive tests, they say, as of Friday, March 26th, 1 day prior to the funeral. However, officials say he was seemingly determined to attend the funeral service, and officials say went against their orders and attended the funeral despite their instructions. Now, officials say that a commission and an internal review will be conducted to discern further what transpired. News of the positive tests that would have been exposed and residents would have become exposed to became known on Sunday, March, when health officials from the Ministry of Health in the British Virgin Islands issued a statement informing the public that persons who attended a local funeral on Saturday, March 27th should isolate and get tested. Jovan, quite a heavy story, quite an unfortunate story as we see it continuing to not only cause a frenzy, but cause a number of a bit of havoc in the territory of the Virgin Islands. There are a number of things that we have to look at when it comes to this story. We see where health officials have finally come forward and said that the issue was inaccurately given. There was a mistake that has happened. We see where they are now confirming that it was a breach of quarantine. A couple questions. We are supposed to be opening our borders on April 15th.
Yes.
Of course, looking to get persons on the cruise aspect in June. Why are we still making such simple mistakes when it comes to issuing inaccurate information to persons? Of course, we agree, mistakes happen. I'm not sure if it's a case where the system is presently overwhelmed, so the traffic that's coming in is causing a bit of havoc. But that being said, when this happens, as we do expect persons will breach quarantine, we are aware of that. What are policies? What are the policies put in place to make sure and to mitigate this? Every time someone God forbid, is to breach quarantine, is this the frenzy and the pandemonium that we're going to be experiencing across our territory? I think at this point in the juncture, as we continue to strive to move forward, there needs to be a much more cohesive conversation between the Ministry of Health and the BVI Health Services Authority, and I don't think we're seeing that.
I like that you acknowledge that, because that's where some of the breakdown is happening, even within acquiring your test results from the authorities. You call the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
The Ministry of Health sends you over to BVI Health Services Authority. You head over to BVI. I'm speaking from experience.
Of course.
You head over to BVI Health Services Authority, and they send you back to the Ministry of Health. So there is a breakdown in communication.
Huge.
Now, Ron, if indeed this person tested positive and was notified,
Prior to.
persons who are positive, aren't they supposed to be under mandatory lockdown or isolation?
Correct.
Which means they should be monitored.
Exactly.
We cannot leave persons to their own leisure to make the right decision, especially in light of something as sensitive as a funeral.
Yeah.
Persons will be
Use
tested
emotion.
to breach the quarantine. So again, it comes back to our system. We are preparing to reopen our borders to a massive amount of visitors come April and by default June, when the cruise ship ports reopen. And our systems are still not working. We have also heard of situations where persons who are supposed to be in quarantine are out and about, literally. So is the system truly working? Who is monitoring these people?
Exactly.
And why are we waiting for an influx, essentially, to ensure that our systems are effective?
And then after the fact, issuing statements like you're going to be conducting internal queries. This is not the time and place to be playing with people's lives in regards to trying to figure out what happened. Again, policies are in place, and at this point, we should be at a point where we are solid enough to control and try our best to mitigate.
And you know, Ron, one of the concerns I have about this situation, I think in general as it relates to issues on COVID-19, especially from the health departments, it's so difficult to get questions answered.
Of course.
These very questions were posed the day before during a virtual interview entitled Ask the Experts. So, of course, the media was there to ask questions. And one of the questions posed was, was this an imported case? One, was this a false negative case? And if yes, this person was indeed positive, how were they able to breach quarantine if indeed they are being monitored by a task force? And the questions went unanswered. We were literally told that we're not going to dive into information on this case. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, all we've seen is panic. All we've seen is the community in a frenzy, and we have dealt with enough. We don't need
And
any
not
more
only
of
that, with the lack of answering questions, the blatant ignoring of questions, you then leave the public to come up with their own opinions and their own aspects of what took place, then further giving misinformation from the general public.
Well, I'm very glad that you reported on this story, Ron, because of course the officials eventually came forward with the answers that we need, and we are trusting that this individual, whoever he or she is, will be fined, because the fine is $10,000.
And that, of course, is another question. We do have fines in place.
Yes.
Are we, as an entity, sticking to those fines and enforcing them?
Right. Well, those questions remain unanswered. But viewers, as we move on, a very positive story. Now, guided by his passion and care for the community, young philanthropist Jalil Cameron, through his Jalil Cameron Foundation, has donated 10 food vouchers to the Social Development Department. Now, the $1,000 worth of vouchers will be distributed just in time for Easter to assist families who are here struggling as a result of the economic fallout from COVID-19. Now, viewers, just last Saturday, the Jaleel Cameron Foundation hosted a flea market sale across from Crafts Alive to raise funds for the initiative. Jaleel shared that while sales fell short of the $1,000 goal, his foundation supplemented the rest that was needed to meet the donation. Now, we caught up today with this amazing young man who we're always so refreshed to hear from, listening to what he had to say.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that came out and supported. Thank you to Digicel, everyone that came out and bought stuff from the yard sale. I will always continue to be thankful for the people that always support me, because without the support, there's no foundation. So really, it's the people's foundation, not my foundation. So thank you to everyone who continues to support me, and I hope that you can find some sort of pride in knowing that you have kept some families fed this Easter. Thank you.
That was young Jaleel Cameron, 16 years old.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Now, Jaleel, who began his humanitarian work at the tender age of 10 years old, has supported many ventures throughout this territory. Most notably, though, in 2015, he superseded his goal of $17,000 by raising and donating $20,000 towards the purchase of an EEG machine at the then People's Hospital. Now, an EEG machine is most often used to diagnose epilepsy, which was absent at that time, in the territory for testing. After being diagnosed with epilepsy, Jaleel began selling water to generate funds to purchase the machine. His efforts did not go unnoticed, and persons and organizations contributed significantly to help him surpass his goal. Now, in light of the economic impact of COVID-19 and what it has had on the territory, Jaleel is now imploring persons across our BVI to, and I quote, give back as much as you can. Wow, when I think about Jaleel Cameron, I get chills, literally, to see such a young person, not only so compassionate in his efforts to lend towards the community and care, but also so well-spoken, so articulate, but also so grateful, not only highlighting himself and his efforts, but within all that he's doing, giving thanks to his grandmother, his family, to the community. And really goes back to the fact that it still takes a community, but he continues to give back to this very community that has raised him.
Jovan, when I think of Jaleel Cameron, 3 words: young, distinguished gentleman.
Yes!
Amazing. Keep doing it. We're so proud and so happy to see him poised when it comes to philanthropy and really making a difference. Jaleel, we congratulate you and so proud on your remarkable work that you continue to do.
Absolutely, viewers. Now, still ahead, we see the Methodist Circuit Superintendent postponing the fellowship services and, of course, encouraging members to get tested and vaccinated and, of course, to show this evidence before a decision is made to resume the chapel's activities due to the recent COVID-19 exposure. And we also see the Premier commenting on a very big headline coming out of CDC. Their no-sale order has been maintained until November 1st. Now, the Premier is commenting on that, especially since our cruise sports reopen on June of this year. Our viewers, stick with us. There's so much more coming after this commercial break.
The win.
What the hell?
I'm freaking out.
Jeff is about these people.
It's always a pleasure coming to you live and direct from the
What's poppin'? What's really big?
Davis has won it for the Lakers.
Viewers, welcome back. Thanks so much for sticking with us. Now, continuing on the local scene, the saga continues. In a letter to the Methodist Circuit in the British Virgin Islands dated March 29th, Circuit Superintendent Reverend Dr. Keith Lewis informed that as a result of the COVID-19 exposure on Saturday, March 27th at a recent funeral, the decision has been made by Circuit staff to postpone all fellowship events. Now, the letter sent to our newsroom read, and I quote, "It is with regret that I inform you that the Circuit staff has decided in an overabundance of caution to close all of our chapels with the exception of Anegada with immediate effect from Monday, March 29th through Thursday, April 1st. Further stating, we will update you on Good Friday and Easter services. All fellowship activities with the churches are postponed. Now, Dr. Reverend Lewis continued, this unusual decision is based on the presence, he said, of one individual who tested positive for COVID-19 and saw it fitting to be present at a funeral service at the Seacows Bay Methodist Church on Saturday, March 27. Now, the Seacows Bay Methodist Church chapel is also closed to the public for all services. The circuit superintendent further encouraged congregation members who were in attendance to get tested and as well vaccinated, stating, members of the congregation who were in attendance at the funeral are encouraged to be tested and vaccinated and to show evidence, he said, of this before a decision is made to resume activities at the chapel. We have been advised that the building be thoroughly sanitized in keeping with the government's guidelines. Now, viewers, Circuit Superintendent Dr. Reverend Lewis further lamented again that as Circuit Superintendent, he was strongly advocating and encouraging churchgoers to get vaccinated, which some members have echoed is going a bit too far. Lewis said, as your pastor and circuit superintendent, I am strongly advocating and encouraging you to please get vaccinated. If you were present at the funeral, give heed to the public advice and self-isolate for 10 days and call the hotline to make an appointment for testing. Now, Methodist Lenten midweek Wednesday service is also canceled. The announcement comes on the heels of Good Friday and Easter Sunday, as churchgoers across the Virgin Islands usually celebrate and observe the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, Jovan, the plot continues to thicken. Of course, as is expected and should be done, the Methodist Circuit is taking precautionary measures to close chapels as well as to postpone services. But very interesting comments by the Reverend as he continues to say, and I quote, are encouraged, members of the congregation who were in attendance at the funeral are encouraged to be tested and vaccinated, and further stating, and to show evidence of this before a decision is made to resume activities at the chapel. Now let's analyze that statement for a second. When we continue to look at the loaded level of this, we continue to preach that the vaccination is a choice. I got vaccinated, and that was a choice again. Why do we continue to subtly insinuate to persons that if they do not get vaccinated, activities and have you will not be conducted? You're essentially saying to your practitioners that if you do not get vaccinated and you not show evidence of this before, a decision perhaps will not be made to resume chapel. So now it's affecting the way persons worship. And I think, just like many persons are echoing, this perhaps is going just a little bit too far.
And first of all, we haven't seen, the pastors really weigh in on the conversation of COVID-19 up until now. And I think, just like you said, a very loaded statement. We have to continue to, and I think, in times like these, I'm really happy that persons like you and I are in the media, and of course, persons who continue to do this type of work to remind persons of both sides of the spectrum. Again, the vaccine remains mandatory. And,
not mandatory.
Sorry, not mandatory. Not mandatory. So the vaccines are not mandatory, which means you still have
freedom
a
of choice.
You have a choice whether you want to take the vaccines or not. Again, we will continue to reiterate the reason why there's so much scare, fear, and frenzy in the community is because enough education is not being done. I think if persons were well informed on all aspects of the vaccines, including what's in it, persons may be a bit more forthcoming and comfortable with, taking the vaccine and moving forward. But that has not been done effectively. So to hear statements like these, and essentially hear bits and pieces of persons forcing others to take the vaccine, it's alarming, Ron.
Indeed, absolutely. And again, as a media, we continue to bring professionals to the forefront to educate on the vaccine and to bring as much awareness as possible. I think that's one thing the viewers cannot say they have not gotten enough of from 284 Media, the constant health professionals coming to speak on the issue. And that's all we can do. The decision at the end of the day should be up to residents.
Absolutely, and it remains yours. Now, viewers, earlier this month, the BVI Ports Authority announced a June 2021 cruise port reopening with government's approval, of course. Now, the announcement stated that cruise vessels with fully vaccinated passengers and crew can visit the territory, providing that they can meet the testing, pre-testing, as well as the embarkation measures upon arrival. However, just yesterday, despite increasing pressures from the cruise industry and its allies in government across the world, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which of course is CDC, plans to prevent cruises from U.S. ports for the foreseeable future. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Miami-Dade Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, and of course the cruise industry lobbying group CLIA, they are pressuring the CDC to allow U.S. cruises as soon as July 1st. But the agency is not budging on its, and I quote, conditional sale order, which gives cruise companies a long list of requirements they must meet before being allowed to restart. Now, the government officials say that the conditional sale order, first issued by the CDC in October and in place until November 2021, is outdated and unnecessary now that COVID-19 vaccines are available. Now, just today, we spoke to the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew Foy, and really questioned whether the BVI will still be moving forward with a June reopening in light of these new developments. And the Premier said, and I quote, "In any initiative the government of the Virgin Islands engages to further strengthen our economy during this COVID-19 era is always balanced against safety first. In this vein, all ongoing discussions and actions in this respect are targeted in that direction. We will continue to keep everyone informed." End of quote. Now, viewers, just earlier this month, CDC spokeswoman Caitlin Starkey said a majority, but not all, of the 6 cruise companies with ships in the U.S. waters had complied with the first phase of the order, which was to test all crew members for COVID-19 weekly and report results to the agency. Now, in response to the Cruise Lines International Association's public demands just last Thursday, the conditional sale order to be lifted. Now, in responding to that, Starkey said, and I quote, "On October 20th, 2020, CDC issued framework for a conditional sailing order, which is the CSO, that remains in full effect until November 1st, 2021. She added, "Returning to passenger cruising is a phased approach to mitigate the risk of spreading COVID-19. Now, details for the next phase of the CSO are currently under interagency review." End of quote. Now, the CDC first banned cruises in U.S. waters in March of last year amid COVID-19 outbreaks on multiple ships. Now, after extensive lobbying from the industry, it lifted its no-sale order on October 30th, replacing it with the conditional sale order. Now, in November, the CDC added instructions for lab testing, and in December, it expanded the list of test cruise companies can use. Now, since then, crew members have continued to test positive for the virus at sea. 33 cruise ships in the United States waters have reported crew members testing positive for COVID-19 or having COVID-like illness, which is clinically compatible without laboratory confirmation since the start of the year, according to the CDC documents officially obtained earlier this week. Now, Ron, very shocking news coming from the CDC, especially since the BVI and I guess the rest of the region and by default the world is looking forward to cruise ships being able to sail again. It is a massive part of the travel industry that has been brought to a complete halt, but also one of the areas where we saw extensive spreading of the virus, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. We are not sure at this point how that will affect our reopening in June literally 2 months from now.
Correct.
But we are hoping that it doesn't put a further halt because we also know that other cruise ships from other parts of the world are also sailing. And these new rules really just apply to cruise ships from the United States.
Correct. And again, though, it will be a domino effect because many of our counterparts across the region will also be affected. We see where a lot of money has also been pumped locally in adjusting facilities here at Tortola to facilitate the cruise passengers. So we will, of course, continue to monitor that situation. Viewers, still ahead, consultations on sustainable development plan moves forward, and employers are being reminded of the holiday payment guidelines for the very long weekend ahead. All this and so much more after a word from our sponsors. You're watching 284 News. Gentlemen, inspiring gentlemen, and our partners that hold us down. It's season 2 of The Art of a Distinguished Gentleman, taking you on the most inspiring journey with the best and brightest distinguished gentlemen of the BVI. Raw, real-life lessons that translate to grounded, community-minded, well-rounded men like you've never seen them before. Governor Augustus J.U. Jaspert, Jovan Klein, Neil Klein, and so much more. Turning modern-day men into 21st century distinguished gentlemen with yours truly, Ron Grant, a 284 Media production. Viewers, welcome back. You're watching 284 News out of Tortola in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Continuing on, in a Government Information Services release, it was announced that the government of the Virgin Islands is engaging stakeholders in a Virgin Islands stakeholders meeting now in a series of public consultations on a national sustainable development plan for the British Virgin Islands. Premier and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Andrew A. Foy, officially launched the public consultations on March 12th in collaboration with the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, Premier Foy has stated that the government is establishing a national sustainable development plan to ensure that it fulfills its commitment to citizens and to engage at the regional and international levels more effectively. Premier Foy stated, and I quote, "The alignment of national development priorities with the Sustainable Development Goals is an indication of our national ownership of the global agenda and will help to meet the international monitoring and evaluation standards, as well as allow us to be accountable to the people of the British Virgin Islands." Now, Premier, while explaining the overreaching goal of preparing a development plan, stated that his government has the goal to strengthen the resilience of the society to withstand further hurricanes, pandemics, and any other crisis that may come, and to secure the territory's future prosperity through sustainability. He said, "We believe the best way to achieve this is to pursue the sustainable development of these islands, as we all love and call home." Premier Foy also adding, "In order to do so, we must have long-term planning. We have resolved that such a plan should position us to achieve a sustainable development goal that are the global standards for humanity." Now, UNECLA is providing support to development of the plan through the addition of the lead consultant, Dr. June Sumer, who is a former Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean. Jovan, as we speak about sustainable development, this is something we've heard quite a bit, and it's one thing to continue to do studies and to hold public consultations, but I do think it is at a very pivotal point that we continue to take this seriously as a territory. When we think of sustainable development and its reach, particularly with this recent administration, this is something that they have spoken of since being elected. We see where consultations are being had, but we also need to get to the point where we're making our blueprint and our sketches a reality.
Well, the good thing is the blueprint started even prior to this government taking up administration. Yes. And that's one of the things upon the initial consultation meeting that was held a few months ago that the government did mention. You know, we are essentially, and Dr. Sumer, who is actually leading the charge, acknowledged the fact that a lot of the groundwork has been done. So what she's doing is she's pulling forward the blueprint from back then and really personalizing it to meet the needs, the current needs of the territory. Because like you said, this is a plan that persons need to get involved in simply because it will guide the territory's growth for the next few years. And not only that, it really shows as well how the BVI will essentially fit into the region and the world at large. So I'm really hoping that members of the electorate really take this seriously and come out and be a part and share your opinions and really be a part of the consultation process, because it is a plan for you.
Yes.
Now, viewers, that is all the time we have for now. But again, reminding you to check us out via our website. That is 284media.com. We have lots of information available there. We're also on Facebook at 284 Media, and as well as on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, 284 BVI. As usual, it is my pleasure. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I'm Ron Grant. It's always a pleasure. We will see you tomorrow as we deliver your daily dose of local, regional, and international content. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.